Good evening, and welcome to Late Night Science. I'm grateful you've arrived here, in this quiet space between thought and sleep, where curiosity hums softly beneath the noise of the day. Wherever you are, perhaps in a dimly lit room or lying beneath the slow breathing of the night, let yourself settle. Feel the gentle weight of your body meeting the earth, the small movements of your breath tracing invisible shapes in the air. This is where our journey begins. Not in the grand or the distant, but in the near and the unseen. They're invisible, ancient, and everywhere, shaping worlds in silence. What if the smallest life holds the greatest power of all? As you drift into this story, take a moment to whisper into the comments below where you are listening from. It's a strange and beautiful thought. All of us scattered across continents, yet gathered here in this shared moment of wonder. And if this slow unfolding of science and awe brings you comfort, a quiet click on like or subscribe helps this circle of calm continue to grow. To those who have already joined, who have been part of these late-night voyages, thank you. You are the invisible network that keeps this constellation of stories alive. Now close your eyes for a moment. Let the night stretch around you like water. Imagine lowering yourself into that stillness, passing beneath the threshold of sight. Down here, light softens into mystery. Vision, so often our measure of truth begins to fail. And yet within the blur, something new begins to appear. A single drop of water rests before us, glinting faintly under a beam of light. To the naked eye, it is nothing more than a bead of clarity. But under a lens, a simple circle of glass that bends the world, the drop reveals itself as an ocean. Inside it, hundreds, thousands of tiny bodies move with silent intention. Each one alive, each one complete, each one performing the rituals of existence that echo our own, feeding, dividing, sensing, adapting. A city inside a raindrop. A universe contained in a tear. There's something almost devotional about the way they move. Spirals, flickers, glides, all without audience or applause. They have done this for billions of years, long before our eyes learned to see them, long before our language tried to describe them. These are the first citizens of life's long history. Microbial, molecular, magnificent. Think of it. While stars were forming in the blackness of space here on a cooling Earth, invisible beings were beginning their patient work, learning how to turn sunlight into energy, minerals into structure, chaos into order. Before the first fish, before the first tree, even before air as we know it existed, they were here. They shaped the world not through conquest or scale, but through quiet persistence. To understand them, we must slow down. The human mind loves spectacle, the thunder of storms, the flash of galaxies. Yet the truest revolutions often begin in silence. Microbes do not roar or shine, they hum. Their power lies in patience, in the repetition of small acts carried out endlessly. They remind us that creation is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's a whisper that reshapes stone, a single breath that changes everything over time. Through the microscope, the illusion of emptiness dissolves. What once seemed void is teeming with structure. Filaments coil like fine threads, membranes shimmer like glass, and invisible currents stir within drops no larger than a tear. The eye adjusts, wonder deepens. You realize that empty has never truly existed. It was only waiting to be seen differently. There's a quiet humility that comes with this realization. We spend much of our lives seeking what is grand. Mountains, planets, distant galaxies. But the microbial world invites us inward, downward, into the architectures of the infinitesimal. Here, the grandest truths wear the smallest faces. The boundaries between you and the world begin to blur because these same patterns, the same shimmering membranes, the same spinning engines of energy, also exist within you. The drop of water, in a way, looks back at you. And maybe this is what makes it so profoundly moving, the recognition that the universe doesn't scale in meaning. The vast and the microscopic speak the same language of existence. Every act of life, from the cell's quiet division to the mind's restless thought, is part of one immense conversation. Ongoing and borderless, if you listen closely, the stillness around you starts to feel inhabited. The air itself seems thicker with invisible life, spores, bacteria, drifting particles that have no interest in our awareness, yet make our very breathing possible. Each inhalation carries their work, oxygen born from ancient microbial labor, recycled endlessly through soil and sea. You and I are at this very moment breathing through them, not apart from them. And when you think about it, that means the boundary between us and them is more porous than we imagine. The microbes in that drop of water are distant cousins of the ones within us, the ones on our skin, in our gut, in the air we exhale. We are, in truth, a walking collaboration of unseen lives, or a colony of the invisible made visible. The story of microbial life is also our own autobiography, written in smaller handwriting. In this first step of our journey, we don't yet name them, or classify them, or measure their functions. We simply witness them. The way you might watch the tide come in, or clouds shifting over a field. To see them is to remember how easily wonder hides in the ordinary. To see them is to rediscover sight itself. And in that rediscovery, a question stirs. If so much of life hides beyond vision, what else might be waiting just beyond perception? What forms of connection, of intelligence, of communication remain veiled simply because our senses were not tuned to their frequency? Tonight we linger here, at the edge of the visible, where mystery hums softly beneath the skin of the world. The drop of water still glimmers under the lens. Its multitudes move on, indifferent to our attention, certain in their endless rhythm. They remind us that life does not depend on being seen to be extraordinary. So, breathe slowly. Let your thoughts drift like tiny swimmers through that illuminated drop. Feel the smallness not as limitation but as entry, an invitation to wonder. The unseen, after all, is not absence. It is abundance in disguise. And as the lens closes, as the drop fades back into the night, another question quietly takes its place. If this is what exists beneath the threshold of sight, what worlds might await when we look deeper still? The night is quiet again. You can almost hear the pulse of time, slow and steady, like the deep current of an unseen ocean. Imagine for a moment that we could follow that current backward, beyond memory, beyond history, beyond even the dreams of the planet. Let your mind drift there now, past forests and mountains, past the shimmer of seas and skies, into a world so young it has not yet learned the color blue. The earth then was not the gentle home we know. It was a restless sphere of fire and rock, wrapped in clouds that reeked of sulfur and steam. Lightning forked across skies of copper and ash. Volcanoes rose and collapsed like breathing mountains. The oceans were dark, dense with minerals and heat, the water more metal than mirror. It was a world without air, without comfort, without witness. And yet, beneath that chaos, in the smallest and most fragile of shelters, life was beginning to whisper. There were no lungs here, no green leaves reaching for sunlight. There were only molecules learning to dance, to take and give, to balance energy like an ancient equation. In the slow alchemy of the early Earth, carbon met hydrogen, sulfur met iron, and from those collisions came rhythm, tiny, repeating cycles that began to resemble metabolism. It was chemistry rehearsing for biology, matter preparing to breathe. Picture it now, a microscopic cell floating in a hot tide pool, surrounded by mineral dust and bubbles of gas. It is simple, a bag of reactions, and yet inside it the improbable spark of purpose begins to stir. This small body does not merely exist, it transforms. It takes in energy from the environment and turns it into something new. It is not content to drift. It endures, divides, remembers. And in that moment, the earth, for the first time, breathes. But this breath is not like ours, not the rise and fall of a chest, not the inhalation of oxygen. It is a chemical sigh drawn through ancient pathways of carbon and hydrogen. These microbes exhale methane, hydrogen sulfide, or carbon dioxide, invisible vapors that will, over millions of years, rewrite the very atmosphere. Through their slow and tireless work, they begin to sculpt the air itself, molecule by molecule, breath by invisible breath. If you could stand on that early shore, though you could not yet survive its poison, you might see faint ripples where these unseen beings gather. They cling to rocks, forming slimy mats that ripple like living fabric under the warmth of the sun. They feed on minerals and sunlight and each other. They build colonies so vast they turn the tides metallic green. They are building, always building, the groundwork of every forest, every creature, every breath that will follow. It is a strange and humbling truth that the beauty of a blue sky, the clarity of our air, even the possibility of our voices speaking tonight, began as microbial industry. They were chemists before there were eyes to admire the results. They invented photosynthesis before plants, sculpted atmosphere before sky. From their labor came oxygen, first as poison to them, then as possibility to others. What began as survival became generosity. This is the first great transformation, the Earth's original act of creation through patience. The microbes did not plan, did not dream, did not design, and yet, through endless repetition, they became architects. In their persistence, they changed the rules of the planet. The rock became soil, the water became sky, and the atmosphere turned from a suffocating shroud into a cradle for evolution. There's a paradox in this, that the most monumental events in the story of life are also the quietest. No explosion, no symphony of light, just countless cells breathing in darkness. Over billions of years, their small contributions added up to something colossal. It's as if the planet itself learned to exhale hope, to breathe in its own possibility, and still, if we could zoom in closer, much closer, we would see each microbe glowing faintly with purpose, exchanging elements like a secret handshake. They take carbon from the rocks, nitrogen from the airless void, sunlight from a still, angry star. Out of that chaos they build order, structure, energy, lineage. Each one becomes a thread in a tapestry too vast to see, and together they weave the blueprint of all that will come. There's a moment, somewhere in this endless unfolding, when one lineage of microbes discovers a new kind of alchemy, the ability to take light itself and turn it into life. It's a quiet revolution, no fanfare, no applause, but it will change everything. With that act, the Earth begins to transform from a planet of shadows into a planet of light. Oxygen gathers slowly, invisibly, filling the sky with the breath of the future. But it is not an instant triumph. For eons, that oxygen is toxic. It kills as much as it creates. Entire species vanish in the process, buried in the sediments of their own invention. The planet evolves through loss as much as through gain. Every breath forward comes with a silence behind it. In this way, creation and destruction walk hand in hand, each one teaching the other how to continue. To listen to this story is to feel the weight of time stretch almost beyond comprehension. Billions of years condensed into a few heartbeats of narration. Yet the microbes never hurry. They teach us that progress need not be loud, that the foundation of life can be laid by those who move without haste, without recognition. Their patience is the pulse of the planet itself. As you sit here, breathing the air that their descendants made, think of that continuity. The oxygen filling your lungs tonight has passed through uncounted lives before reaching you. through algae, forests, oceans, and the quiet work of bacteria. Every breath is a relay, an inheritance carried forward from the first living cells to the present moment. You are, in this sense, still participating in that same ancient respiration, the continuation of a breath that began before sky existed. Perhaps this is the secret that microbes have always known, that creation is less about dominance and more about endurance. To live is to shape, patiently and invisibly, the conditions that allow others to live too. They built the future not through ambition, but through attention, through doing what they must endlessly. So as we close this chapter, let your breath fall into rhythm with that ancient pulse. Feel the lineage of air flowing through you, connecting your lungs to the first cells that exhaled possibility. The ground beneath you was once their home, their laboratory, their cathedral. Their chemistry became your atmosphere, their breath your inheritance. And as the night deepens, one quiet question lingers in the space between thoughts. If life could arise from such darkness, what other miracles might still be waiting, quietly, in the shadows of our own beginnings? The night opens again like a tide, soft and patient. You're here, adrift in the dark, listening to the slow heartbeat of the world before memory. Imagine the planet still anew, still uncertain of what life could be. The seas are heavy with metal and heat. The sky hangs low and red with the haze of volcanic breath. Lightning dances across waters thick as ink. There is no blue, no air to fill lungs, no rustle of leaves, no sound but the quiet crackle of chemistry continuing its long rehearsal. And then, somewhere in that dark ocean, something small and bright awakens. A single cell, no larger than dust, but radiant with a new invention. It learns to drink sunlight. It learns to take the waste of the world, the carbon, the suffocating gases, and turn them into something entirely different. It learns to breathe light. This is cyanobacteria, the architects of air, the weavers of atmosphere, the quiet revolution that would transform everything that followed. Their gift is photosynthesis, a word that sounds technical, but is really an act of grace, the turning of light into life. They take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and release something new into the world: oxygen. At first, it's just a whisper of it, a trickle into the ancient seas. But, in time, it becomes a flood that will paint the sky. Close your eyes and imagine that transformation. For millions of years, the oceans bloom with invisible light, greenish-blue clouds of microbial life that shimmer near the surface. They pulse in rhythm with the sun, drawing energy through molecular machines more intricate than any human creation. They are small, but their influence is planetary. Each one a tiny engine exhaling breath into a world that has never known the word sky. To us, oxygen is ordinary, the invisible comfort that moves through every inhalation. But to the early Earth, it was catastrophe and miracle all at once. Oxygen was poison to many of the ancient microbes that had come before, corrosive and deadly to the chemistries that had once thrived in darkness. The Great Oxidation Event, as scientists now call it, was not a gentle dawn. It was upheaval, extinction, transformation. Yet out of that chaos, a new world took shape. Iron dissolved in the seas began to rust, settling to the ocean floor in great red bands that still mark the rocks of our planet today. The sky shifted from copper to azure, the seas from black to blue. What was once toxic became essential. The breath of one species became the atmosphere for all others. Cyanobacteria did not conquer the earth. They reshaped it from within by simply continuing to do what they had always done: harness light, release life. There's something profoundly humble in that. They did not set out to change the world. They simply followed their chemistry. And yet, Their quiet persistence transformed everything. Perhaps that is the most elegant form of creation. Change born not of ambition, but of the simple act of being fully what you are. If you could stand beside them, if you could shrink to their scale, you'd see colonies spreading across the shallows like living carpets. They form filaments, loops, and sheets, weaving themselves into layered reefs called stromatolites. Even today, in a few rare corners of the world, you can still find them. In the tidal flats of Shark Bay, in the salt ponds of Western Australia. Ancient architects, still building, still breathing. Each layer is a page in the planet's oldest diary, a record of light captured, carbon fixed, oxygen exhaled. Through these tiny builders, the Earth learns to metabolize sunlight. Energy begins to flow in new ways. The stage is set for the rise of complexity, for the eventual dance of animals, the breathing forests, the long chain of inheritance that leads, somehow, to you sitting here tonight. Every breath you take carries the legacy of their ancient labor. The oxygen filling your lungs is the same gift they gave to the sea, recycled endlessly across epochs. In that way, the boundary between now and then collapses. Their work is still happening, everywhere. The cyanobacteria in today's oceans still perform the same alchemy, each cell a continuation of a lineage billions of years old. When you watch the ocean glitter beneath the sun, you're watching the same breath that turned stone into soil, silence into sound. Consider the color blue, the hue of air, of distance, of calm. Before cyanobacteria, there was no blue. The pigments of the sky were born from their exhalations. They painted the world without brush or intent. Every sunrise, every twilight gradient is part of their long, patient artwork. Even the shimmer of your own veins beneath your skin carries that signature. Oxygen's trace, a chemical memory of their devotion to light. Science tells us this story in equations and isotopes, but it also lives in poetry, because somewhere in that quiet transformation lies a lesson about what it means to create. Cyanobacteria remind us that change does not always roar. Sometimes it hums. Sometimes it takes billions of years. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is to persist in gentleness. There is also beauty in the balance they created, in the way destruction became possibility. Oxygen, for all its life-giving grace, is also the source of decay. It burns, corrodes, rusts. It gives and it takes. But perhaps that duality is what makes it sacred, a reminder that every act of creation carries its shadow, every birth its cost. The cyanobacteria did not eliminate chaos. They transformed it into a different kind of harmony, one that could breathe, evolve, dream. Now, in the stillness of this night, take a slow breath in. Feel it travel through you, invisible, effortless, ancient. That breath is a message passed across billions of years, from those first architects of air to the human lungs that now carry their inheritance. You are, in a sense, their continuation, their exhalation given form. The same sunlight that fed them still warms your skin. The same molecules of oxygen that rose from their tiny bodies now sustain your thoughts. The past has not vanished. It circulates within you, and so the Earth, once suffocating in its own infancy, found a way to breathe. Through cyanobacteria, the planet became self-aware of its atmosphere. It learned to balance its own chemistry, to turn light into renewal. What began as invisible toil became a planetary heartbeat, a rhythm that continues even now, pulsing through oceans and forests, through every living thing that inhales and exhales under the same endless sky. As you drift deeper into this quiet space between science and dream, let that rhythm accompany you. The world breathes through you and you through it. The air around you is a shared inheritance, ancient and ongoing. And if something so small, so humble, could reshape the destiny of a planet, What quiet revolutions might still be waiting, unnoticed, within the smallness of our own lives? Settle again into the quiet. The air feels still, like a held breath between heartbeats. Tonight, we travel inward, far beyond the reach of telescopes and oceans, into a realm so small it slips beneath thought itself. If the last chapters carried us through time, this one carries us through scale, downward, inward, into the cathedral of the cell. Imagine you are shrinking, softly, cell by cell, atom by atom, until your perspective folds into the invisible. Around you, the familiar dissolves into something luminous and strange. Light itself seems to slow. You drift into the translucent interior of a living cell. Not a single thing, but a symphony of things moving with exquisite precision. It feels alive in a way that words cannot quite capture. It's as if every molecule knows the rhythm of a hidden song. The cell is not chaos, though it might seem so at first glance. It is structure in motion, a geometry so intricate it borders on the sacred. Its boundaries are soft, alive and discerning. A membrane made of phospholipids, a shimmering double layer that separates and connects at once. Through it, countless molecules drift in and out. Sodium, calcium, oxygen, water. Each movement measured, negotiated, invited. This thin, fluid wall is not a barrier but a gatekeeper of harmony. It allows the world to enter, but only in ways that preserve balance. Within, there is no silence. The cell hums with constant motion, with not noise but music. Ribosomes bead along strands of RNA like notes along a stave, translating genetic script into folded proteins. These proteins twist and curl into precise shapes, each one a tool, a message, a piece of architecture. Some become channels that puncture membranes, others become enzymes that speed the dance of chemistry, still others weave the scaffolds that give the cell its form. It is choreography at the molecular scale, order emerging from perpetual motion. At the center, in eukaryotic cells, lies the nucleus, a vault of memory and instruction. Within it, DNA coils like galaxies, spiraling into nucleosomes and chromosomes, storing the code for everything the cell will ever build or repair. It is both library and oracle, quiet until called upon. When a gene is read, it is not shouted but whispered, a strand unzipped, a message copied, a task assigned. Each command becomes an act of creation, unfolding in microscopic grace. Nearby, the mitochondria flicker. Remnants of ancient symbiosis, descendants of free-living microbes who once survived on their own. Now they are part of the cell's inner society, powerhouses spinning chemical energy from food and oxygen. Their engines are made of proteins wound into turbines, rotating at unimaginable speed. The molecule ATP, adenosine triphosphate, emerges from this machinery, the universal coin of energy that sustains everything from thought to heartbeat. In each mitochondrion, millions of these molecules are minted every second, silent as snowfall, essential as breath. Pause there for a moment. Picture one rotation of ATP synthase, the molecular turbine that powers life. Its shaft turns, driven by a flow of protons like a watermill, powered by invisible current. Each spin produces a single molecule of energy, ready to be spent on motion, growth, or repair. This is happening in every one of your cells right now in numbers too vast to count. Your body is an empire of spinning miracles, a galaxy of turbines humming in microscopic unison. And yet, despite the precision, there is no central command. The cell does not require an overseer. Coordination arises naturally from interaction. It is a democracy of molecules, a community of cooperation where feedback and balance keep the whole alive. Information moves not in words, but in shapes, charges, vibrations. It is life as resonance, one molecule recognizing another, responding, adapting, continuing. If you listen to this microscopic orchestra long enough, you begin to realize how improbable it all is. Each reaction must occur in the right place, at the right time, in the right proportion. A single error can unravel the pattern, and yet, billions of times a second it succeeds. Perhaps that is what makes it feel like art. Not the beauty of perfection, but the beauty of endurance. The cell is architecture built from impermanence. Its walls are rebuilt daily, its molecules recycled constantly, its interior in flux, and yet the whole persists. It reminds us that stability is not stillness. To live is to be in motion, to renew yourself through ceaseless change. The same lesson whispered by rivers and galaxies is echoed here, in the quiet geometry of life's smallest room. Under the microscope, the cell's contents shimmer in delicate translucence, filaments stretching like suspension bridges, vesicles drifting like lanterns through cytoplasmic currents. Every line and fold has purpose. The Golgi apparatus packages and ships molecular cargo, the endoplasmic reticulum folds and refines proteins, lysosomes break down what's no longer needed. Each organelle a workshop in a living city. The more you observe, the more it feels designed, though its design comes not from intention, but from evolution's patient sculpting. It is easy to imagine divinity in such order, but perhaps divinity is simply what we feel when complexity becomes comprehensible, when chaos reveals its hidden symmetry. The cell, like a cathedral, invites reverence, not for a deity, but for existence itself. Within its boundaries, every atom plays its part in a drama older than stars. Now imagine millions of these cells linked together, weaving tissues, forming organs, building creatures capable of perception. Thought love. Each cell remains itself, yet contributes to something greater. Life scales upward, but never forgets its foundation. The same molecular music that hums inside a single bacterium hums inside you. You are quite literally built from the same choreography that animates the microbial world, a continuation of their geometry in a more complex form. When scientists first glimpsed cells through early microscopes, they called them rooms because they looked like tiny chambers. The name has remained, but the metaphor has deepened. Each cell is indeed a room, not empty, but alive with purpose. A room that builds itself, repairs itself, remembers itself. A room that holds both ancestry and invention. You might wonder, as you lie here listening, why it feels so comforting to imagine something so small. Perhaps it's because the cell reminds us that order is possible even in the unseen, that even the most delicate structures can carry the weight of continuity. Within us, billions of such rooms are working, rebuilding, dreaming, each one a quiet vote for life's persistence. Take a slow breath. Feel the air move through you, through layers of living tissue, through the invisible labor of countless cells. Each one transforms oxygen into motion, into warmth, into thought. You are, in every sense, a collective, a living mosaic of cellular devotion. And as you drift towards sleep, let this realization settle gently. The same patterns that shape the first microbes now shape you. The same geometry of membranes and motion binds your existence to theirs. The boundary between ancient and present dissolves. Within your skin, the cathedral of life continues its silent service. And somewhere in that stillness, a question lingers, soft as breath against glass. If every cell carries this quiet perfection, what greater architecture might emerge when all of life learns to move as one? The night begins in stillness again, soft as breath resting on the edge of thought. You close your eyes and drift inward, toward the code that hums beneath every cell, the deep alphabet of existence. Beneath the quiet hum of metabolism, beneath the rhythmic spin of ATP synthase, there lies something subtler, a language written in 4 letters, ancient and endlessly reinterpreted. It is not spoken, yet it speaks across time. It is not heard, yet every living thing is fluent in it. This is the story of genes and the great, unending conversation they have been having since life began. They say language begins with a spark of understanding, with the moment when one entity recognizes the meaning behind another's signal. But in the microbial world, language began as chemistry, base pairs finding their match, strands of DNA winding together in double helixes that both store memory and create possibility. Adenine embraces thymine, cytosine pairs with guanine, 4 letters, countless poems of existence. Through their sequences, microbes learn to describe themselves, to preserve the instructions for how to live, grow, divide, and endure. Yet over time, these instructions became more than private diaries. They became messages meant to travel. You might imagine the genome as a book, but it is more like a living network of correspondences, a library in constant rewrite. Microbes, though tiny, are fluent in exchange. They do not hoard knowledge. They share it. A gene that confers survival in one environment may be passed, traded, or borrowed by another organism entirely. This is horizontal gene transfer, evolution's quiet rebellion against linear history. Through it, microbes rewrite the story of life not by descent alone, but by dialogue. It is less a family tree than a murmuring web, each branch connected through unseen conversations. In the deep oceans, in the soil beneath your feet, even in the hollow spaces of your lungs and gut, microbes whisper to one another through genes. When one bacterium encounters a strand of DNA floating free, perhaps released from a fallen neighbor, it can take it in, weaving that sequence into its own genome. The act is intimate, almost trusting, an incorporation of memory not born of bloodline, but of proximity. In this way, life learns not only from its ancestors, but from its companions. Evolution becomes less a matter of survival of the fittest, and more a conversation about what it means to persist together. Picture it. Countless microbial cells in the dark, exchanging fragments of code as though telling stories around an ancient fire. One shares a tale of resistance to heat, another of surviving acid, another of turning sunlight into sugar. Each gene is a parable, a condensed survival myth. Those who listen and integrate these tales gain not just new abilities, but new ways of being. In this exchange, individuality blurs. Identity becomes porous. The genome itself becomes a communal text, edited, annotated, passed between invisible hands. When scientists mapped the genetic relationships among bacteria, they expected to find clear lines of descent. Instead, they found threads woven in all directions, species borrowing from species, sometimes across great evolutionary distances. Genes leapt like sparks from one lineage to another, rewriting definitions of kinship. The genetic web of life looked less like a tree and more like a shimmering net of communication, vibrating with exchange. Even now in the air you breathe, this transfer continues, imperceptible yet constant. The microbial world is forever in conversation, reshaping itself sentence by sentence. And this dialogue doesn't end with microbes. The genes that shape your own body carry echoes of these ancient exchanges. Mitochondrial DNA, for instance, whispers of its bacterial ancestry. A reminder that once, long ago, a cell absorbed another, and rather than digesting it, chose to listen. That act of acceptance of molecular cooperation gave rise to complex life. Every breath you take is an inheritance of that truce. Your cells still harbor that ancestral dialogue, two lineages coexisting in mutual trust. Even within your own genome, not all sequences belong purely to you. Viral fragments, bacterial relics, ancient stowaways, they reside quietly between your genes. Echoes of past invasions that became partnerships. Some of these sequences, once dangerous, now play vital roles in your development. They help regulate genes, guide cell differentiation, and shape the immune system. What began as intrusion evolved into collaboration. The line between self and other grows ever more translucent. Life, it seems, has always preferred conversation to conquest. There is something deeply humbling about this realization that our individuality, so cherished, so defined, is stitched together from the borrowed words of countless others. The language of genes is not proprietary. It is fluid, communal, endlessly recombined. Every organism alive today is a chorus, not a solo. The self is not an island, but an ecosystem of voices, many of them microbial, some ancient beyond memory. And perhaps that is why this story feels so strangely familiar, because language, as humans know it, mirrors what genes have done all along. We too share and reshape the stories we inherit. We borrow words, exchange meanings, transform our world through communication. A sentence spoken in one era can echo through centuries, just as a gene transferred in one cell can ripple through generations. Both are acts of continuity. Both are testaments to life's urge to connect. In laboratories today, scientists trace the movement of genes through time, reconstructing who spoke to whom and when. They find trails of code that link marine bacteria to desert microbes, pathogens to harmless symbionts, ancient ancestors to modern species. They see that life does not evolve in isolation. It evolves in conversation. Evolution, once imagined as a climb toward complexity, now resembles an infinite dialogue, a global symposium conducted through molecules, with every participant both speaker and listener. And when you think of it that way, the world begins to feel intimate again. The air is filled not only with wind and dust, but with whispers of genetic possibility. The oceans are manuscripts still being written. The soil beneath your feet is a living archive of experiments and exchanges. Even now, as you listen, the microbes within you are trading fragments of their own, updating their resilience, editing their instruction manuals, continuing the dialogue that began billions of years ago. It's a strange comfort, isn't it? To know that the language of life never stops speaking, that every creature, from the smallest cell to the largest whale, is a syllable in an ongoing sentence that the earth itself is still composing. There is no final word, no fixed meaning, only conversation, adaptation, renewal. So tonight, as the world quiets around you, you might imagine the murmur beneath it all, the steady, unseen dialogue of genes threading through time. Every whisper of evolution is part of that same story, spoken softly through the chemistry of survival. And perhaps, somewhere within that vast exchange, a single question drifts toward you like static in the dark. If life itself is a conversation, what story, in your own small way, are you passing forward? The night holds its breath again. Outside, the world feels suspended, the soft hum of distant life barely audible, like the faint echo of an ancient song. And somewhere within that quiet, beneath the surface of your own body, the greatest alliances in history continue their silent work. Every heartbeat, every breath, every spark of thought, all are powered by the descendants of once independent beings that chose, long ago, not to fight, but to join. They were separate once, free living wanderers in a hostile world. One, capable of drawing energy from sunlight, another able to burn fuel from oxygen. They drifted through ancient seas billions of years ago, alone but capable. Then one day, or perhaps over countless days, one cell absorbed another. In any other time, this would have been the end. Digestion, dissolution, the quiet completion of predation. But this time, something unprecedented occurred. The devoured remained undigested. The devourer did not destroy but adapted. The two began to live together, to share their strengths, to weave their fates into one. This was not conquest, it was communion. And in that joining, the world changed forever. The one that entered became the mitochondrion, a tiny, spiraled powerhouse that could turn food into energy more efficiently than any other known process. The host, now home to a collaborator, gained a new rhythm of existence, faster, more complex, more capable of sustaining greater forms of life. And so began a partnership that would give rise to every animal, every tree, every human that has ever existed. You carry this story in every cell. Look closer, and you'll see that your body is a cathedral of mergers. Each mitochondrion inside you bears traces of its independent past, its own DNA, its own tiny circular genome written in the alphabet of bacteria. It still divides on its own schedule, still whispers its ancient language. And when your cells harness oxygen to release energy, it is the mitochondria who do the work, spinning out adenosine triphosphate like cosmic turbines. They are your power plants, your quiet alchemists of survival. And in the green world, in the forests, the meadows, the algae adrift in sunlight, a different merger tells its parallel story. Another bacterial wanderer, one gifted in photosynthesis, entered a host cell and stayed. From that union came the chloroplast, the emerald factory that drinks sunlight and exhales life. Every leaf you've ever touched, every breath of oxygen you've drawn, traces back to that union. Mitochondria gave the world energy through combustion. Chloroplasts gave it light, transmuted into sustenance. Together, they rewrote the rules of life. What began as survival became symphony. Scientists call this process endosymbiosis, but the name feels too mechanical for what it represents. It is a love story written in molecules, a tale of surrender and transformation. Two beings, once separate, learn to live as one. Boundaries blur, identities dissolve, new forms emerge. The small becomes part of the vast, and in doing so, gains a kind of immortality. For though the original cells are long gone, their descendants pulse in every living creature still. Think about that. Your life depends on an act of trust that occurred billions of years before you were born. The very energy that moves through your muscles, that fuels your thoughts, comes from a pact made in a microscopic sea. Each cell, in its quiet way, remembers this truce. It carries forward the wisdom that survival does not always come through dominance, but through intimacy. There is poetry in the way this truth repeats itself through nature. Coral and algae, fungi and roots, whales and their gut microbes, all echoes of that first joining. Cooperation has always been the secret current beneath evolution's tide. The fiercest forces of change are not only those that compete, but those that combine. The forest breathes because of countless unseen partnerships. Your body thrives through alliances that never end. The same principle hums beneath the stars, and within your bloodstream, existence is shared. Yet, there's something fragile in this balance, an unspoken understanding that both partners must give and receive in measure. If one dominates too much, the harmony falters. If one withdraws, the system collapses. True symbiosis is not control, but choreography. It requires the humility to listen and the grace to adapt. It is the art of coexistence, not static, but alive, responsive, evolving with every heartbeat. Even the word symbiosis carries softness in its etymology, from the Greek syn meaning together, and bios meaning life. To live together, to weave together. It's a phrase that could describe not just biology, but the universe itself. At every scale, from quarks to galaxies, entities form bonds that transcend individuality. Stars fuse elements through shared gravity. Planets orbit through mutual pull. Cells merge through necessity and become something entirely new. Perhaps cooperation is not the exception in nature, Perhaps it is the foundation. When you breathe tonight, your mitochondria hum in ancient rhythm. They are older than your lineage, older than animals, older than the forests that now fill the air with oxygen. Their memory is deep time itself, and yet they live in you, tirelessly transforming each inhale into energy. In their merging, the blueprint for all future collaboration was set, a quiet reminder that the most enduring power is born not from isolation, but from relationship. And this realization ripples outward, doesn't it? The way ecosystems depend on balance, how societies thrive through empathy, how even consciousness itself might be a kind of internal symbiosis, a dialogue between mind and body, self and environment. Everywhere you look, life is not one voice, but a chorus. Each note finds its place through listening. Each harmony is earned through surrender. The cell, that smallest of sanctuaries, holds within it the universe's oldest truth. To endure, we must merge. To expand, we must open. To evolve, we must learn to live together, gently, deliberately, as those first cells once did. So as the night deepens and the world settles into quiet rhythms, imagine that first act of union still unfolding, endlessly echoed in every living thing. Two tiny beings meeting in the dark, choosing not destruction, but devotion. Their choice reshaped the planet, filled the oceans with oxygen, and eventually gave rise to you, a living testament to cooperation. Perhaps the lesson lingers still, written in your own cells like a whispered vow from long ago. Survival is not conquest. It is communion, and as that thought settles over you, soft and glowing, another question stirs just beneath it. One that waits for the dawn. If all life thrives through gentle merging, what new worlds might awaken when we learn once more to join? You walk across the ground and think it's solid, stable still. Yet beneath every step lies a world so alive, so intricate, that the surface you tread is more like the roof of a vast, breathing city. The soil, that humble brown skin of the earth, is no mere dust. It is a universe of life, unseen, ancient, and astonishingly busy. It hums beneath us in perpetual motion, carrying out the quiet labor that keeps everything above it alive. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine descending into that hidden world. The sound of the air fades, replaced by a faint symphony of movement. The pulse of roots, the rustle of threads, the unseen chatter of cells. What looks from above like dirt becomes, under the lens of curiosity, an immense network of relationships. Bacteria, fungi, archaea, protozoa, billions upon billions of living beings sharing a single handful of earth. They are the alchemists of the planet, endlessly taking what has fallen and transforming it into nourishment again. Here, decomposition is not decay, but renewal. The fallen leaf that crumbles into the forest floor does not vanish. It becomes a story rewritten in smaller handwriting. Microbes dismantle its structure piece by piece, releasing energy and elements that flow back into the roots of trees, into the breath of plants, into the air itself. What we call rot is in truth resurrection, a cycle of generosity repeated endlessly beneath every forest, field, and meadow. The soil, when seen through the eyes of a microscope, is almost architectural. Each grain of sand becomes a skyscraper, each pore a corridor, each root a bridge. Around them, bacteria move like citizens of a hidden metropolis, constructing, dismantling, exchanging. Some form biofilms, translucent membranes that bind particles together like mortar. Others drift free, explorers and messengers, connecting one microhabitat to another. Their collective work turns chaos into structure, lifeless minerals into fertile ground. Then there are the fungi, that are great weavers of the underground. Their hyphae stretch for miles beneath the soil, delicate threads that bind ecosystems into one organismal whole. These fungal filaments wrap around plant roots, merging into them, forming what scientists call the mycorrhizal network. Through this living web, trees share nutrients, warn each other of pests, even distribute resources to seedlings shaded by the canopy. The forest is not a competition, but a conversation, a dialogue of sugars and signals carried by fungal couriers. The soil is their language and every root tip a listening ear. When you pause and think about it, this is symbiosis written on a planetary scale. Plants feed the microbes with the sugars they make from sunlight. The microbes, in turn, feed the plants with nitrogen, phosphorus, and other minerals mined from rock and decay. Each depends utterly on the other, and together they sustain everything that breathes. The Earth's green surface is, in truth, just the visible face of its microbial heart. And yet the soil is not only alive in a biological sense, it also remembers. Within its layers lie records of time, spores from vanished forests, pollen grains from ancient winds, the ghostly DNA of extinct species. Every raindrop that falls, every root that dies, every season that passes leaves its faint signature there. The soil is the planet's diary, written not in ink, but in life itself. When you touch it, you touch continuity, the link between what was, what is, and what will be. There is also something deeply philosophical about soil. It humbles us, reminds us that our existence depends on a layer of life rarely noticed and even less understood. We build our homes upon it, yet it is the true foundation of the biosphere. Without its microbial inhabitants, dead matter would accumulate, nutrients would stagnate, and the world would suffocate under its own abundance. But the soil breathes for us. It recycles, rejuvenates, and restores. Every plant that grows, every animal that feeds, every human who eats, all are beneficiaries of that constant underground miracle. Scientists have only begun to understand the extent of this living system. A single teaspoon of healthy soil can contain more organisms than there are people on Earth. Within that teaspoon, communities form and dissolve, genes are exchanged, and chemical negotiations unfold that determine the fertility of fields and the stability of climates. Microbes produce compounds that regulate the growth of roots, release gases that shape the weather, and even influence the scent of rain after a storm. The freshness you smell when the earth is wet, that clean, comforting aroma, is the signature of soil-dwelling bacteria releasing geosmin, a molecule as old as life itself. But this living world is delicate. Modern life, with its heavy footprints and hungry extractions, too often forgets the fragility beneath its feet. When soil is stripped, poisoned, or compacted, the microbial networks break. The invisible cities fall silent. Regeneration slows. What took millennia to build can vanish in decades. Yet the beauty of soil is its resilience. Given rest and care, it heals. Microbes return, roots re-knit, fungi stretch their filaments once more. Life, it seems, never truly leaves the ground. It simply waits for an invitation to begin again. If you stand barefoot in a forest clearing, feeling the coolness rise through your skin, you can sense it in that deep pulse of creation, subtle but steady. You are part of that cycle too. Every cell in your body contains atoms once carried by soil, once transformed by microbes, once part of a forest that stood before you. You are not separate from the ground. You are its continuation. To walk upon it is to walk upon your own history, rewritten in every season. And so the soil is not just the foundation of life or being, it is its teacher. It shows us that endings are beginnings, that collaboration sustains more than conquest ever could, that the unseen often holds the greatest power. Beneath our feet lies the ultimate reminder of humility, that the world endures because its smallest architects never cease their work. The night deepens, and you imagine all the billions of beings beneath you still awake, still weaving the world together one molecule at a time. They do not sleep, for they are the breath between death and renewal. In their endless labor, the earth remains alive, and perhaps, as you drift toward rest, a quiet question rises with the scent of rain and earth. If the ground itself is alive with connection, what unseen networks within us are quietly keeping our worlds in balance too? There is an ocean within you, vast, unseen, and endlessly alive. It rolls not with waves of salt water, but with tides of microbes, each carrying histories older than your species, older than your bones. Beneath your skin, in the warmth of your gut, across the surface of your lungs and the folds of your tongue, trillions of tiny lives drift, swim, divide, and converse. They are not passengers. They are part of you, your invisible citizens, your internal sea. You might imagine your body as one singular being, a single narrative of flesh and consciousness. But the truth is far more intricate, far more wondrous. You are not one life, but many, not a solo, but a symphony, a moving ecosystem of cooperation and conflict, of balance and exchange. For every human cell you carry, there are at least as many microbial ones, each contributing to the harmony of your existence. You are not the ocean's edge. You are its echo. Let's begin, as all journeys do, with breath. Each inhale draws in not only oxygen, but countless invisible travelers, bacteria, spores, microscopic remnants of the living world around you. Your lungs, once thought sterile, are instead a gentle shoreline where air meets tissue and life continues its dialogue. Each exhale releases others, tiny ambassadors sent back into the atmosphere. Breathing is not just exchange with air, it's conversation with life itself. Now drift deeper, down to the digestive ocean, the great internal sea that fills your body's center. Here, in the winding darkness of your intestines, thrives one of the densest ecosystems known on Earth. Trillions of microbes, bacteria, archaea, viruses, fungi, live in this intricate labyrinth, breaking down food, extracting energy, and synthesizing molecules your body alone could never make. They produce vitamins, regulate inflammation, train your immune system. They are your unseen collaborators, sculpting health from the inside out. Science calls it the microbiome, but perhaps a better word is community. Each species has its role, its rhythm, its territory. Some digest fibers that you cannot, transforming them into short-chain fatty acids that feed your cells. Others produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, whispering chemical messages that rise from your gut to your brain. The idea that microbes can influence your mood once sounded like poetry, but now it is evidence. The biology of feeling. When you sense calm, when you dream, when you fall in love or despair, you are hearing the faint echoes of this invisible orchestra. The gut and the brain, it turns out, are in constant dialogue through the vagus nerve, a living bridge of sensation and signal. Through it, your microbial inhabitants send their messages, shaping appetite, emotion, even memory. You might think your thoughts are your own, but perhaps they are collective. The consensus of 1 trillion voices, each speaking in the language of chemistry. It is humbling, isn't it? To realize that selfhood is not solitude, but symbiosis. And just as in the outer world, diversity within this inner ecosystem matters. A rich, varied microbiome hums with resilience, able to adapt, repair, and resist disturbance. When diversity fades, imbalance takes hold. Illnesses of the body and even the mind can arise when this harmony falters. The same principle that governs coral reefs and rainforests governs you as well. Balance sustains life. Monoculture invites collapse. Every bite you take, every environment you inhabit, every moment of stress or rest shapes this delicate equilibrium. You are in essence tending a garden within yourself. Some of your microbes have been with you since birth. When you entered the world, your first breath and your first touch seeded you with your mother's microbiota. The microbial inheritance, that marks the start of your individuality. Since then, every interaction, every meal, every landscape, every kiss has added new species to your collection, new companions to your internal sea. You are shaped by the places you've lived, the people you've loved, the foods you've tasted. The microbiome is memory made biological, the story of your encounters written in cells too small to see. And this relationship is not static. It changes with age, with season, with mood. The microbes of a child differ from those of an elder. The microbiome of a winter differs from that of a summer. Even the circadian rhythm, the daily turning of your body's clock, pulses through them, synchronizing growth and rest with the day's light. You are, in every sense, a rhythm within rhythms, an ecosystem in motion. If you could listen closely enough, perhaps you would hear it. The faint, continuous murmur of this inner ocean. Each microbe metabolizing, communicating, existing in intricate harmony with its neighbors. There are predators and prey, alliances and betrayals, quiet acts of generosity and sudden bursts of competition. Within you, the story of evolution is still unfolding, playing out at microscopic scales every second. And yet, even as they live within you, these microbes are not entirely yours. Many come and go, passing through in days or weeks. They are guests, allies, sometimes stowaways. The boundaries of your body are more fluid than you imagine, a membrane of exchange between self and world. Every breath, every touch, every mouthful is a mingling. The illusion of separation fades when you realize that you are continuously merging with the environment, dissolving and reforming in biological communion. When you see yourself this way, as an ecosystem, something shifts. The sharp edges of individuality soften. The idea of control gives way to care. You begin to understand health not as dominance over the body, but as harmony within it. The inner ocean does not need to be tamed. It needs to be tended, respected, allowed to flow. Like any sea, it thrives in balance, neither stagnant nor stormy, always moving toward equilibrium. And perhaps there is comfort in this thought, that even in solitude, you are never alone. In the stillness of night, as you lie in the dark and feel the rise and fall of your breath, remember that within you countless lives are stirring, creating, sustaining. Your existence is not separate from theirs. It is the sum of their devotion. It is easy to forget this in a world that prizes separation, that teaches us to think of the self as fortress, the body as boundary. But the truth beneath that illusion is fluid, porous, communal. You are a coral reef of being, a rainforest in motion, an ocean that walks and dreams. To be alive is to be shared. So tonight, as you drift between waking and sleep, imagine it. The inner sea glowing softly in the dark, its waves made of cells, its currents shaped by thought and nourishment. It moves with you, breathes with you, thinks with you. It is your oldest companion, the ocean you have always carried home. And in that stillness, perhaps a final question rises, light as a bubble rising through water. If within us the ocean still lives, what greater tides beyond us might we also belong to? There is a quiet language that hums beneath the surface of the world, a molecular whisper that only the smallest can hear. It is not spoken in words nor sung in sound, but carried through the chemistry of existence itself. This is how bacteria speak. Through quorum sensing, the secret pulse of molecules that allows them to count, to decide, to act together as one. They live their lives mostly in solitude, scattered across water, soil, skin, and stone. Each cell on its own is simple, a microscopic droplet of persistence. But when enough of them gather, when their density crosses a silent threshold, something astonishing happens. They begin to talk. They release molecules called auto-inducers, chemical messengers drifting through their environment like notes on the wind. When the concentration of these molecules reaches a certain level, every bacterium in the group can sense it. It's as if they take a vote, silently, collectively. And when the quorum is met, they decide together what must be done. To glow, perhaps, like the symbiotic bacteria that make a squid's belly shimmer softly at night, cloaking it from predators below, or to attack, like a hidden colony that waits in stillness until their numbers are sufficient to overwhelm a host, or to build forming biofilms, those thin, resilient cities of slime that line rocks, teeth, and riverbeds. Through quorum sensing, they decide when to remain invisible and when to become something greater than themselves. It's easy to think of intelligence as something belonging only to large brains, to creatures that think, plan, remember. But here, at the smallest scales, intelligence takes another form. It is distributed, collective, wordless. It arises not from thought, but from pattern, not from neurons, but from molecules. It is the wisdom of togetherness. Pause for a moment and imagine it, 1,000,000,000,000 conversations happening in the unseen world all at once. In the oceans, in the soil, in your own body, molecular signals drifting like faint radio waves across the landscapes of the microscopic. Every bacterial community is, in its own way, an orchestra of intention, responding, adjusting, deciding, living. The phenomenon itself is ancient. Long before language evolved, before consciousness took form, microbes were already communicating, coordinating, coexisting. They have been practicing the art of togetherness for billions of years, long before multicellular life even existed. You might say that quorum sensing was the first step toward cooperation, the first whisper of community in the long story of life. When enough voices gather, the world shifts. It's the same in us, though our scales are different. In the human brain, individual neurons are silent on their own, but together they create thought. In a forest, individual trees may seem still, but through fungal networks they exchange information, nutrients, warnings. Everywhere we look, life seems to be built upon this same principle, that intelligence, in its deepest sense, is not individual, but shared. Perhaps that's the great secret the microbes have always known, that unity itself is a kind of knowing. In the world of bacteria, quorum sensing guides everything from light production to virulence, from biofilm formation to symbiosis. It's how they balance competition with collaboration, selfishness with survival. Too few cells and action would waste energy. Too many and chaos would reign. But when they find that perfect middle, that harmonic resonance between isolation and crowd, life organizes itself with quiet. Precision scientists studying these behaviors have begun to realize something profound. Communication at this level isn't just functional, it's aesthetic. It carries rhythm, pattern, timing. The molecular pulses of quorum sensing are like beats in a microbial symphony, coordinating life's choreography with unseen grace. And though we can measure it now, detect those molecules, map their effects, there's still something mysterious in the way it feels. To imagine bacteria waiting, listening, counting themselves through scent and diffusion, deciding together when to awaken, it's a metaphor for the universe itself. A cosmos that listens before it speaks, that gathers before it acts. You could say that quorum sensing is nature's way of ensuring that no voice acts alone. Every choice emerges from the chorus. There is beauty in that restraint and the patience of the microbial world. They do not rush toward expression. They wait for the right density of presence, the right resonance of being. Only then does the signal pass, and only then does transformation begin. And perhaps, in this, there is a lesson for us. In a world that glorifies constant noise, endless expression, ceaseless motion, the bacteria remind us of the power of waiting, of listening until we are truly connected, until our words can become more than sound. They remind us that wisdom is not in speed, but in synchrony. If you could zoom into a single droplet of seawater, you would find it alive with this communication. Thousands of species exchanging molecules, adjusting to one another, forming transient alliances that rise and dissolve in seconds. The ocean, too, is a great quorum, a planetary network of microbial dialogue that regulates our atmosphere, our climate, our very breath. And within you, the same language is spoken. The microbes of your gut use quorum sensing to coordinate digestion, to regulate growth, to communicate across the tissues of your inner ocean. The same principles that govern coral reefs and microbial mats play out silently in your body every moment of your life. We tend to think of the microscopic as insignificant, too small to matter. But if you listen long enough, you start to realize this is where matter itself becomes meaning, where silence becomes speech, where a molecule becomes a message. As night deepens, imagine this vast communication continuing beneath the stillness of the world. Microbes whispering beneath the soil, across the sea, within your skin. They have no eyes, no mouths, no words. Yet through their chemistry, they express something ancient and universal, the need to belong, to be heard, to act together. Maybe, after all, language didn't begin with us. Maybe we inherited it. This impulse to connect, to synchronize, to signal across the dark, and as you drift toward rest, let this thought settle gently like dust in water, that even the smallest life knows when it is not alone, that perhaps, beneath all sound and silence, existence itself is a quorum, waiting patiently for its voices to align and to speak as one. They are neither fully alive nor truly dead, fragments adrift in the vast sea of existence, too small to be called creatures, too persistent to be dismissed as dust. Viruses, the ghostwriters of life, the unseen editors who, without pen or hand, have shaped the grand manuscript of evolution itself. They drift in the air you breathe, the oceans that cradle the planet, the cells within your body. Each one a whisper of genetic code, a few strands of RNA or DNA wrapped in a protein shell, seeking only to replicate, to continue. They have no metabolism, no heartbeat, no will in any human sense, yet somehow they endure, not as beings, but as ideas encoded in matter. If bacteria are the artisans of life, building, communicating, creating, then viruses are its poets of erasure and rewriting. They enter a cell and overwrite its script, convincing it to copy their message instead of its own. Like editors in a cosmic publishing house, they redraft genomes, leaving behind subtle revisions that echo through generations. Most of the time, we meet viruses as destroyers. They bring fever, decay, fear. They collapse empires and alter the course of history through pandemics that sweep unseen across continents. Yet to view them only as agents of death is to miss the deeper truth. They are also teachers, sculptors of complexity, catalysts for change. Long before we arrived, before animals, before plants, viruses were already at work. They moved between early microbial cells, swapping bits of genetic material, creating new combinations, seeding novelty. Without them, evolution might have remained slow, confined, predictable. With them, life became restless, creative, unpredictable, a story that constantly rewrites itself. It's strange to imagine that inside you, right now, ancient viral remnants sleep within your genome. Scientists estimate that nearly 8% of human DNA comes from viruses, echoes of infections long past. What was once invasion has become inheritance. Some of these viral genes have even been recruited by life itself, helping build the placenta that allows mammals to give birth, shaping the very possibility of our existence. The parasite became the parent. The ghost became the guide. There's something profoundly poetic in that. The idea that the forces that once threatened life are now woven into its very fabric. It's as if the universe, in its infinite patience, took chaos and folded it into creation. Every cell of your body carries evidence of that reconciliation, an archive of viral encounters turned into symphony. When you look at a virus under the microscope, it appears geometric, almost crystalline, icosahedral shells, spirals, rods, elegant in their simplicity, alien in their precision. There's no excess, no ornamentation. Each curve, each facet serves a purpose. A design honed by billions of years of natural selection, yet operating at the edge of what we can call living. They do not breathe, but they persist. They do not think, but they adapt. They do not seek, yet they find their hosts with uncanny success. They are a paradox made tangible, an echo of life that still moves through the world with its own kind of agency. And perhaps that's what unsettles us most about them. They force us to confront the blurry boundary between being and not being, between biology and code. In their strange half-existence, we see a mirror of our own origins. Because life itself may have begun in a similar way, from self-replicating molecules that drifted, interacted, mutated, and eventually found a way to persist within membranes. Viruses remind us of that fragile threshold, that existence is not a state, but a spectrum. Sometimes I imagine the planet as a vast page, and viruses as the quills that life uses to rewrite its story. They are constantly testing the script, introducing new words, erasing old ones, challenging the plot. Evolution is not a linear tale. It is a palimpsest, rewritten over and over, and viruses are the invisible authors behind many of its revisions. In the oceans, there are more viruses than there are stars in the known universe. Trillions upon trillions of them drifting through the water, infecting bacteria, turning over carbon, controlling the flow of energy. Without them, marine ecosystems would collapse. They regulate the balance between life and death, bloom and decay. Each moment, they quietly end millions of microbial lives, and by doing so, sustain the food web that supports whales, corals, and us. Death as renewal, erasure as equilibrium. When we zoom out to this planetary scale, the fear that often accompanies the word virus softens into awe. Their work is not cruelty, it is balance. They are the editors ensuring that no single form of life dominates too long, that diversity continues to thrive. Even destruction, it seems, can be an act of creation in disguise, and yet there's still something eerie in their elegance, a reminder that the universe is not obligated to align with our notions of fairness or morality. It simply writes and rewrites endlessly, beautifully, indifferently. The same molecules that give rise to laughter and love can also spawn a pandemic. The same genetic processes that create a butterfly's wing can create a viral shell. There is no good or evil here, only process, but what a process it is. The more we learn, the more it seems that viruses are woven into every major turning point in evolution, from the first complex cells to the rise of mammals. They are not visitors in the story of life. They are co-authors. Maybe that's the real meaning of their paradox. To be alive is to change, to risk, to transform. And transformation often begins with intrusion, with something foreign entering, rewriting, reshaping. In that sense, viruses are not outside of life, but expressions of its most fundamental drive to renew itself through difference. As night deepens, imagine them drifting in the dark, tiny geometric ghosts, waiting for the right cell, the right moment, the right chance to continue their long, quiet authorship. Somewhere between chaos and order, they hover, pen in hand, ready to write the next line in the story of the world. And you, built from countless such revisions, the living sum of a billion-year collaboration between cell and code, are one of their finest pages. So the question lingers gently, like a soft exhale at the edge of thought. If life is a story forever rewritten by its own ghosts, who then is really writing you? There are places on this planet that seem inhospitable to all that breathes. Places where heat melts stone, where acids bite through metal, where light never reaches and cold turns air into crystal. Yet in those places life persists. It hides in boiling pools, clings to the walls of ice, sleeps within rocks deep beneath the seafloor. These are the extremophiles, microbes that do not just endure the impossible, but thrive within it. They are the quiet philosophers of existence, teaching us that life's true home is not comfort, but possibility. Imagine a world of scalding steam, colors swirling like molten glass, the hot springs of Yellowstone, or the hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. There, temperatures exceed what would destroy the proteins of most living beings. Yet, within that furious chemistry, archaea known as thermophiles build their lives, using enzymes that remain stable in the heat of what should be annihilation. To them, boiling is normal. Fire is peace. Elsewhere, in pools that would burn your skin, lakes rich with sulfuric acid, where the air itself smells of rot and lightning, acidophiles sip from the cauldron, making a living from what poisons nearly everything else. Their membranes are armor, their chemistry, poetry and adaptation. Life, it seems, does not ask permission from its environment. It simply learns the language of survival. Then there are the psychrophiles, Kiichin, those who dwell in eternal winter. Beneath glaciers, within Antarctic ice, in the saline shadows of frozen lakes, they persist. Their enzymes remain supple in cold, their membranes fluid in frost. They move slowly, but they never truly stop. For them, stillness is not death. It is simply another rhythm. Deep within the earth, kilometers below the surface, others dwell, lithoautotrophs that feed on minerals, living entirely in the dark. They are sustained by the planet's internal chemistry rather than sunlight. In those depths where pressure could crush submarines, they quietly metabolize rock into energy. These creatures have never seen the sun, and yet they are alive, and perhaps older in lineage than anything that ever looked upon the sky. Extremophiles dissolve the illusion of limits. They whisper to us that life is not fragile, seeing it is elastic, resourceful, daring. It stretches itself across the full spectrum of possibility, filling even the spaces where physics seems to say no. For a long time, humans believed life could exist only within a narrow comfort zone: mild temperature, liquid water, oxygen, sunlight. But then we began to look closer, and the definition of habitable began to unravel. Each discovery of extremophiles expanded the circle of life's domain, not just across the Earth, but in imagination. If life can thrive in the boiling vents of the ocean, why not on the moons of Jupiter beneath the icy crust of Europa, where similar hydrothermal systems may whisper warmth into the deep? If microbes can metabolize sulfuric acid, might there be cousins on Venus hidden in its upper clouds? The extremophiles do not only teach us about Earth, they teach us how to search the stars. Their existence blurs the line between biology and philosophy. They compel us to ask what life truly is. Is it chemistry, pattern, persistence? Is it the ability to grow, or simply the refusal to vanish? Each extremophile in its own way is a small act of defiance, a declaration that existence is not limited by comfort, but defined by creativity. There is beauty in that defiance. Not loud or violent beauty, but quiet and precise, the kind born of endurance. These microbes do not rage against their environment. They harmonize with it, turning hostility into home. They are the artists of constraint, composing survival from scarcity. In the deep-sea vents known as black smokers, entire ecosystems depend on them. Bacteria oxidize hydrogen sulfide, a gas toxic to us, and transform it into energy. From that invisible alchemy, entire communities arise. Giant tube worms, clams, shrimp, Life built upon poison, sustained by chemistry alone. Lightless gardens blooming in darkness. When you look closely, you begin to see a pattern. The same pattern that runs through all of nature. Every boundary life encounters, it bends. Every obstacle it transforms. It's not rebellion, but adaptation. A kind of faith that the universe will always allow one more experiment. And perhaps this is why the study of extremophiles feels so profoundly spiritual. They show us that being alive is not about finding ease, but about finding resonance, the precise vibration that allows you to exist in your chosen corner of chaos. Even within your body, echoes of their resilience remain. Some of your enzymes trace their lineage back to heat-loving ancestors. The molecular scaffolds of your cells carry ancient solutions to ancient problems. Life has never forgotten its training in endurance. The extremophiles remind us, too, that the edge of the possible is not a fixed line. It moves as knowledge deepens. Once it seemed impossible that life could survive above 100 degrees high, yet microbes have been found living comfortably in those extremes. Once we thought acid would dissolve all biology, yet cells dance within it. The universe, it seems, delights in stretching our definitions, and in that stretching, something humbling unfolds. We realize that life is not the exception to the cosmos. It is its natural expression. Where there is energy, there is potential. Where there is potential, there is life waiting to awaken. It makes you wonder what other forms might exist beyond our reach of sight or chemistry. Could there be beings that live in methane seas, or in clouds of ammonia, or in plasma storms around distant stars? The extremophiles tell us not to doubt it. They tell us that possibility itself is alive. If microbes can make a home in boiling acid, then perhaps consciousness can make a home in uncertainty. Perhaps what matters most is not where you can live, but how you choose to live within your given elements as the night quiets. Imagine the planet breathing through these resilient beings, through the boiling springs and the frozen wastes, through the acid and the salt. Imagine their patience, their calm defiance, their microscopic courage. They exist where the world would seem most silent, and yet they hum with purpose. And so, at the edge of the possible, we find not emptiness, but abundance, not the end of life, but its most eloquent expression, because maybe, just maybe, the true limit of biology is not temperature or pressure or pH. Maybe it's imagination itself. If you could hold a piece of ancient rock and listen closely, it would whisper. Beneath its silence lies a memory, not of continents or storms, but of cells. Microbial cells long vanished, whose lives and deaths became the texture of time itself. In their fossils and chemical traces, the planet keeps its diary. Life, it turns out, is not only the creator of time's story, but its recorder. Before there were trees or bones or shells, there were microbes, soft-bodied, invisible, ephemeral. Yet somehow their presence left marks that outlasted empires. Traces of their metabolism became the pigments of stone, the isotopic signatures locked in minerals, the delicate outlines etched in shale. They are the first archivists of the Earth's long memory, the quiet timekeepers who turned existence into record. Imagine a shallow sea 3.5 billion years ago. The water glows faintly green with cyanobacteria, spreading across the surface in films and mats. As they photosynthesize, they leave behind minerals that stack layer by layer into rippling stone, stromatolites. These are the first monuments of life, microbial architecture fossilized into eternity. To stand before them now in places like Shark Bay, Australia, is to stand before the handwriting of the planet's youth. Every layer tells a story, a rise in oxygen, a shift in chemistry, a subtle change in light. The microbes did not intend to record these things, but their collective existence became a kind of sedimentary symphony. Through repetition, they wrote time itself. And so when geologists read the rocks, they are also reading life's autobiography. Carbon isotopes that tilt slightly one way or another reveal who breathed, who photosynthesized, who thrived, and who perished. Even the tiniest difference in ratios between carbon-12 and carbon-13 becomes a word in the ancient text. A record of metabolism. Older than the moonlit forests we know today, microbes taught the earth to remember when they exhaled oxygen into a world that had none. Iron in the oceans rusted and settled into bands of color. Red, black, red, black. The banded iron formations that streak ancient cliffs. Those stripes are more than geology. They are punctuation marks in the story of the planet's awakening. Each layer marks a pulse in microbial breath, the rhythm of oxygen emerging from the silence of stone. Even in death, they recorded. As microbial mats decayed, their organic matter sank into mud, becoming oil and gas after eons of compression. The fuel that lights cities today is, in a sense, stored sunlight, captured, processed, and archived by microbes billions of years ago. Every flame we kindle carries the ghost of their labor, but not all records are fossilized in rock. Some remain alive in the genetic material that travels unbroken from cell to cell, generation to generation. DNA itself is a timepiece, a molecular clock ticking softly within every living thing. Mutations accumulate at measurable rates, and by tracing them, we can estimate when branches of life diverged, when the ancestors of humans parted from other primates, when the first bacteria diverged from archaea. Each genome is both a blueprint and a chronicle, a living fossil written in 4 letters, recording billions of years of experimentation. Microbes carry the oldest editions of that story. Their genes are like recurring motifs, ancient refrains that resurface in every new composition life attempts. Even now, deep underground, microbes continue to archive the slow processes of the earth. In sediments beneath the ocean floor, they metabolize at glacial speeds, cycles so slow that a single division might take 1,000 years. In that slowness, they synchronize with geological time, their chemistry merging with the planet's pulse. They are the custodians of continuity, ensuring that even when surface life changes wildly, something ancient still persists below. It's humbling to realize that time, for them, feels different. To a microbe sealed in permafrost, 1,000,000 years might pass like an exhalation. To another dwelling near volcanic vents, time might stretch and contract with each eruption, each fluctuation in heat. They do not count years, but reactions. Each metabolic flicker a measure of existence. When we look for life beyond Earth, it is this patience we seek, this microbial endurance that makes time itself flexible. On Mars, for example, we search for biosignatures in stone, patterns of isotopes, layered minerals, or microfossil shapes that might betray ancient microbial activity. We are, in essence, searching for another planet's diary. Because once you understand that microbes are timekeepers, you begin to see the universe differently. Every world with chemistry and energy holds the potential for memory. Life, wherever it appears, will not only live, it will begin to write. Even now, new microbial stories are being written in places we rarely look. In the frozen methane of the Arctic, in the acid caves of Spain, in hydrothermal vents miles below the sea. These environments preserve their own records, organic films, trapped gases, chemical gradients. Each discovery is another page added to the grand archive of being. In their persistence, microbes blur the boundary between life and geology, between biology and chronicle. A stromatolite is both a habitat and a monument. A fossilized mat is both biology and literature. Through them, time gains texture. It stops being abstract and becomes tactile, mineral, measurable. And there's something strangely comforting in that. To know that our world remembers not only through human history, but through its own quiet witnesses. beings that have watched every sunrise of deep time. The microbes were there when continents first drifted, when the atmosphere changed color, when the first raindrops fell upon dry stone. They recorded it all without intention, simply by being. Perhaps that's what memory truly is. Not deliberate recall, but the natural residue of existence. To live is to leave a mark. To metabolize is to inscribe. Every chemical reaction, every exhalation, every layer of sediment is a line in the great script of time. As night folds in, imagine holding a pebble between your fingers. Within it, atoms of iron, once kissed by oxygen from ancient microbes, still shimmer faintly. A pebble is not just matter, it's memory condensed. A fragment of the planet's autobiography, written by hands too small to see, too numerous to count. And as you listen to the quiet around you, perhaps you'll feel it. That subtle pulse beneath everything. That slow turning of time's microbial gears. The earth remembers itself through them, and so do we, because every breath you take, every cell you carry, is a continuation of that first chronicle. Life remembering life, endlessly, patiently, beautifully. Tonight, we stand not before the microscopic world, but before the lens through which we've learned to see it, the human imagination itself. For millennia, the invisible has been both mystery and muse. We once believed that only what the eye could grasp was real, that truth lay in what light could touch. But the story of science, especially microbiology, is a story of expanding sight, a slow awakening to the idea that most of life happens beyond our senses. It begins, perhaps, with a simple lens, a droplet of glass, held up to the light by a man named Antony van Leeuwenhoek. He was not a scientist by training, but a cloth merchant from Delft who loved the shimmer of threads under magnification. In the 1670s, he turned his handcrafted lenses toward a drop of pond water, and what he saw changed the human story forever. Tiny beings darting like stars in motion. Animalcules, he called them, the first glimpse of life too small for eyes alone. Through that act of seeing, humanity crossed a threshold. The invisible became visible, and with it, our understanding of existence began to unfold into new dimensions. Leeuwenhoek's astonishment rippled through history. Imagine it, the realization that an entire universe exists within a teacup, that water itself is alive with movement. It was as if a curtain had been pulled from the cosmos, revealing that even the quietest corners of the world teem with complexity. But this was not just a discovery of biology. It was a discovery of humility. The microscope, like the telescope, humbled us twice over. One instrument revealed how vast the universe is, the other how crowded. Between the stars and the cells, humanity found itself not at the center, but suspended between infinities, the infinitely large and the infinitely small. To look into a lens, then, is to look inward as much as outward. Every time we sharpen our vision, we also sharpen our understanding of how little we know. As centuries passed, the lenses multiplied. Glass gave way to electron beams, to fluorescence, to the silent logic of data. Today, we peer into genomes, tracing microbial lineages across billions of years, and we find patterns that echo through every living thing, including ourselves. When we sequence a bacterium's DNA, we are also reading a shared ancestry. The same molecular alphabet that writes a microbe's survival story is the one that scripts our own. This is the quiet revelation of genomics, the unity of life, written in code, small enough to fit inside a single cell. And yet, even as technology reveals more, it also deepens our sense of mystery. Each discovery opens not a door, but a corridor, one that stretches into questions about consciousness, identity, and meaning. For what does it mean that our bodies are mostly microbial, that we are in essence composite being, human and other, intertwined? What does it mean that viruses, once feared as simple destroyers, are also architects of our genomes? To know these things is not to lose wonder. It is to rediscover it. Science, when seen through the heart, and not just the eye, becomes a form of reverence. Each microscope slide, each sequencing readout, is a prayer of attention, an offering to the truth that life is vaster, more interconnected, and more mysterious than we can ever fully hold. Leeuwenhoek's lens was, in its way, a mirror. It reflected not only microbes, but the human desire to see beyond limitation, to understand what hides beneath appearances. Every microscope since then has been an instrument of humility, teaching us that complexity is where we least expect it. In the 19th century, Pasteur and Koch gave names to the unseen agents of disease, but also to the unseen foundations of health. In the 20th, we learned that life's smallest forms could shape ecosystems, weather patterns, and the composition of the air itself. And now, in the 21st, we see that microbes are not simply organisms, but collaborators, composers of the planet's grand symphony. Each step in that realization shifts our philosophy of life. The invisible has always challenged human ego. When Galileo showed that the Earth was not the center of the universe, we were forced to rethink our cosmic place. When Darwin revealed that we were kin to all living things, we had to confront our biological humility. And now, with microbiology and genomics, we face a subtler truth: that individuality itself is an illusion, that the boundaries between us and them dissolve under magnification. The more we see, the less alone we become, because what science gives us is not just knowledge, it's kinship. To understand microbes is to recognize that the breath in our lungs, the soil beneath our feet, the ocean currents, and even our thoughts are all part of a shared biological conversation. There's a quiet poetry in that realization. It suggests that wonder isn't something we discover, it's something we remember. We've always known deep down that the world hums with life unseen. Ancient myths spoke of spirits in rivers, in stones, in the air. Modern science, in its own language, confirms this intuition, that everything is alive with process, motion, exchange. The microscope simply gave those spirits names, and yet the true power of seeing the invisible is not in conquering mystery, but in coexisting with it. For every answer we uncover, 1,000 more rise like stars. The deeper we look, the more infinite the world becomes. It's easy to think of science as an act of control, to classify, to define, to predict. But the story of the invisible teaches us something gentler, that seeing is not owning, and understanding is not possession. It's participation. Every discovery, no matter how precise, invites us into a larger humility, a realization that we are both observers and observed, part of the very fabric we study. So as you listen tonight, perhaps you'll imagine Leeuwenhoek at his small wooden table, candlelight flickering on the lens, eyes wide with wonder. He leans forward, not knowing that his curiosity will echo through centuries, not knowing that one day we too would peer into invisible worlds and feel the same quiet awe. And maybe, in that shared gaze across time, you'll sense the continuity of imagination, the thread that connects every curious heart that ever asked, "What lies beyond what I can see?" For that question, whispered in wonder, is the beginning of all science, and perhaps also the beginning of wisdom. Tonight we lift our gaze, not away from the microscopic, but through it. We rise gently from the single drop, the single cell, until the whole planet comes into view. And even here, at this vast, cloud-swept scale, the microbes are still with us. They are not left behind under the microscope. They are everywhere, in the ocean's skin, in the breath of the wind, in the vapor of clouds, traveling from continent to continent like invisible pilgrims, stitching the world together. They are the connective tissue of Earth, the quiet threads that weave the biosphere and atmosphere into one continuous body. The planet itself hums with microbial motion, a living web that has no edge, no true boundary, only exchange. Imagine for a moment that you could see it, the sky not empty but shimmering with movement, tiny organisms gliding on air currents, carried from deserts to forests, from the sea's surface to the upper reaches of the stratosphere. A single breath you take may carry bacteria, born in the ocean's spray, molded by the salt and sun, and carried for thousands of miles before meeting your lungs. The air, we realize, is not still. It is a river of life. When scientists send instruments into high clouds, they find microbes alive and waiting, bacteria, fungi and spores thriving among ice crystals. They help seed raindrops, shape the patterns of clouds, even influence weather. Each droplet, each wisp of condensation carries traces of the living world. It is life that teaches the sky how to rain. Below in the deep oceans, another network murmurs. Microbes circulating through currents that span the globe. They drift with the plankton, unseen but abundant beyond imagination. Every wave that rises and falls, every shimmer of light in the water's skin, hides an invisible symphony of respiration, exchange, and transformation. Here, microbes turn sunlight into sugar, sugar into energy, energy into movement, and in doing so they sustain whales, coral reefs, and the entire food chain that feeds the planet. Without their chemistry, the sea would be barren and still, but because of them the ocean breathes. It exhales oxygen, inhales carbon, and regulates the pulse of the climate. We are taught to think of air, water, and soil as separate realms, the domains of atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere, but the microbes do not know these borders. They move freely between them, carrying with them the signatures of connection. A microbe that begins in the soil may one day rise into the wind, cross an ocean, and settle on a leaf on the other side of the world. Through them, the planet shares its breath. This is not poetry alone. It is physics, chemistry, biology, and yet it feels like prayer. Because the more we learn about these networks, the more we understand that Earth is not a stage where life happens, but an organism in itself, pulsing, communicating, self-regulating. When you stand on a mountain and inhale, you're participating in an ancient exchange. Molecules of oxygen once forged by cyanobacteria, now passing from the ocean into your blood. When rain falls, it carries with it microbial seeds that may later give rise to new ecosystems. Even the dust that drifts across the Sahara carries living travelers, microbes that fertilize the Amazon soils. The continents are in conversation, using the invisible as their language. If we could listen to this planetary whisper, it might sound like the soft rustle of breath, not human, but collective, as if the planet itself were inhaling and exhaling through every form of life it sustains. Microbes are not merely passengers on Earth. They are its pulse. They generate the gases that keep the atmosphere alive, recycle the nutrients that nourish the forests, and shape the very texture of the planet's skin. From the darkest vents in the ocean floor to the glacial deserts of Antarctica, they keep the cycles turning: carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, the elemental loops that bind all living things. To understand microbes at this scale is to glimpse a new kind of unity, not symbolic, but physical. Every act of respiration, every exhalation, every decomposition and renewal ties us to everything else that breathes. We live within the microbial web, and it lives within us. The same patterns that sustain the coral reef sustain the soil beneath our gardens. The same microbial reactions that once filled ancient seas now occur within our own cells. Earth's great ecosystems are, in truth, extensions of microbial metabolism, an orchestra that began billions of years ago and has never stopped playing. if we could draw the lines of connection, we would see the planet as lacework, threads of exchange running between ocean currents and wind systems, between forest roots and mountain snows. These threads shimmer with movement, each one a path along which life travels. There is no separation, only rhythm. And when you zoom out even farther, to the view from orbit, where the planet glows blue against the dark, that glow itself is microbial. The oxygen that scatters sunlight into blueness, the ozone that shields us, the carbon dioxide that feeds the forests, all of it born of microbial labor. We often say Earth is alive, but perhaps it's more accurate to say Earth is microbial. Its vitality, its chemistry, its capacity for regeneration all arise from those ancient chemists who never stopped working. They are the builders and the caretakers of planetary balance, and they have been here since the beginning. Cyanobacteria, long ago, filled the atmosphere with oxygen. Sulfate-reducing bacteria still keep the ocean's chemistry in check. Archaea in the deep crust of the Earth recycle methane and hydrogen, preventing imbalance. They are in every sense the custodians of equilibrium, tiny guardians ensuring that the planet never drifts too far from harmony. There's a strange comfort in that, to know that beneath all our chaos and ambition, beneath the shifting borders and the noise of civilization, there is a quiet system keeping the world in tune. We are not its masters, but participants. One species among trillions, each contributing to the great respiration of the planet. When astronauts describe the Earth from space, they often speak of its fragility, the thin veil of atmosphere, the blue shimmer of its oceans. But beneath that fragility lies resilience. The microbial web ensures continuity even through cataclysm. Mass extinctions, ice ages, asteroid strikes. The microbes endure, repair, rebuild. They are the Earth's immune system, constantly healing, constantly adapting, and perhaps, in their persistence, there's a lesson for us. That true strength is quiet, patient, unseen. The planetary web they weave is not made of dominance, but of relationship. It's not a hierarchy, but a conversation and a living dialogue between rock and air, between ocean and root, between cloud and cell. It reminds us that life is not something that exists on Earth, but as Earth. When you breathe tonight, feel the air entering your lungs as ancient breath. Air touched by plankton, by moss, by fungi, by all the small lives that keep the atmosphere supple. You are not breathing alone. The planet breathes with you, and maybe that is the truest definition of connection. Not technology, not communication, but participation in the same invisible rhythm that has pulsed since the first cells met sunlight. We are woven into that rhythm, and if you listen closely, beyond the hum of machines, beyond the quiet of your room, you might sense it still. A faint pulse, a soft continuity, the planet inhaling through the unseen. The microbes are moving. The air is alive, and the web holds. Tomorrow we'll descend once more into that intimacy, to see how memory, time, and meaning themselves are carried in microbial form. But tonight, as you drift into rest, perhaps imagine yourself as part of that web, breathing in, breathing out, with all of Earth. A single thread shining in the living fabric of the world. They're invisible, ancient, and everywhere, shaping worlds in silence. What if the smallest life holds the greatest power of all? We began with that question. And now as our journey draws to stillness, we return to it, not to answer it, but to rest within its echo. Because perhaps the power of the smallest life was never about scale or strength or visibility. Perhaps it was about this, that within the quietest patterns, the whole story of existence hums. Beneath all movement, beneath every spark and sound, There is a deeper stillness, a silence that does not mean absence, but connection. It is the pause before the next breath, the soft hum between pulses, the unseen thread that holds all things together. When we look at microbes, we are really looking at continuity, the way life passes through form after form without ever stopping. One cell divides, another drifts, another dies and becomes something else. And through that endless exchange, the same living essence moves on. Every moment of life is a conversation between what appears and what disappears, between the visible and the invisible, between matter and the mystery that animates it. The microbes remind us that existence is not built from things, but from relationships, from flows, from cycles, from harmonies of transformation. They teach us that nothing is ever truly isolated, that even silence is full of listening. When the first cells stirred in the ancient seas, it did not yet know it was alive. It was simply responding, and to heat, to chemistry, to light. And that responsiveness became the heartbeat of evolution. It continues now in every cell of your body, in the breath you take, in the microbes that live within you and the ones that float unseen through the night air outside your window. Life never ended, it just changed form. And perhaps that is what the silence is. The awareness beneath motion, the waiting field where life gathers before it takes its next shape. We often imagine silence as emptiness, but in truth it is full of possibility, full of presence. Between every wave of sound, between every burst of color, silence holds the potential for what comes next. In that way, it mirrors the microbial world. Small, quiet, and unassuming, yet responsible for everything that breathes, grows, and endures. The silence that holds it all is not the absence of sound. It is the harmony beneath it, the background note of existence, the low hum that carries across oceans, across centuries, across species. And as we reach the edge of our story, we find ourselves looping back to where it began, the threshold of sight, the place where awareness softens and wonder awakens. Only now the unseen feels less like mystery and more like home. Think of the journey we've taken, from a single drop of water to the whole living planet, from the first breath of the ancient earth to the lungs of the sky, from the architecture of cells to the conversations of genes, from the shared intelligence of bacteria to the merging of worlds inside our own bodies. Each step revealed not separateness, but belonging, not dominion, but participation. And now, at the end, we are asked to listen again, not to the noise of discovery, but to the quiet underneath it. Because this silence is not the opposite of life. It is life, waiting, remembering, continuing. If you close your eyes, you might sense it. The faint rhythm of your own breath, syncing with something larger. The breath of oceans, forests, clouds. The pulse of microbial exchange moving through air and soil and body alike. The same pulse that began long before we were here and will continue long after. It is a comfort, isn't it? To know that the smallest lives, the ones beyond our sight, carry the weight of the world with such grace. That they ask for nothing, demand nothing, yet sustain everything. They are not only the planet's workers, they are its memory, its immune system, its dream, and in their quiet persistence, they remind us of something essential, that to endure is not always to struggle, and that to be powerful is not always to be loud. Sometimes power is simply the ability to keep creating, to keep transforming, to keep participating in the music of existence. That is what the microbes have been doing since the beginning, composing the earth from the inside out, in silence, and maybe if we listen with enough patience, we can hear that same music in ourselves, in the hum of our blood, in the rhythm of our heartbeat, in the spaces between our thoughts. Because we too are part of that invisible symphony. Perhaps that is the final gift of the unseen world, to show us that even the smallest being, even the faintest sound is part of something infinite. So we return to the threshold once more, the place between knowing and unknowing, between sound and silence. And there we pause. We breathe, the microbes continue their work. The oceans turn, the air moves, and in the stillness the world feels whole. Before we close, I want to thank you for listening, for wondering, for walking this quiet path through the unseen. If you've been here since the first episode, you've traveled across time and space, from the first spark of life to this final stillness. You've shared your curiosity, your attention, your open mind. And that is a kind of participation too. If this journey has brought you a sense of calm or connection, I invite you softly, gently, to like this video, to subscribe to Late Night Science, and to share where in the world you've been listening from. It helps this small circle of curiosity grow quietly, like life itself. And to those already here, thank you. Your presence is felt. Your wonder has carried this series from idea to story, from story to silence. Now we rest together in that silence, the one that holds it all. Good night.